Hello, Entertainment Daily lovers. Welcome back. Come on in, join me. Let's do this conversation. Trevor Noah has been trending. Yes, Trevor Noah, the comedian. He's been trending for a minute now. So come on in, let us talk. Let me quickly do a little bit of setup. It is late over here, but I have scheduled this live and we are going to do it. So, one thing I noticed is the fact that the story we see online is kind of not full conversation. It's not the full conversation of what happened. So I want to really go in and let's react together about the full conversation while Trevor's why he said what he said, and it's about this DEI situation. If you've been following the American news, you know what's going on in the United States since Donald Trump took over as the president of the United States. We know that so much has been going on in the United States. So please join. Let us know, those of you that know so much about the DEI, let us know what you think. Let me quickly check our sound, and we're going to pull up that podcast because sometimes when you clip off of something, then people are not getting the full picture. And when you go on social media, you will just see the part where he was saying what he was saying. And then I saw a video where somebody even put this whole KKK thing and calling Trevor Noah KKK, things like that. So a lot is going on with that. Um, so that's what we're going to be discussing today. But before we get right in, I want to go and check our sound to make sure that our sound is good. And then the conversation will start. If you're just joining for the first time, this is Entertainment Daily with OK, and we talk about celebrity gist, world news, and entertaining stuff. Sometimes and some news that are not so entertaining also, but if it's a news that is out there, we're going to most definitely be here to cover it. So quickly, let me check our sound and we get right into the conversation. So you get the full picture, okay? So let me see the sound. Okay, so sound is perfect. Now we are going to go over to the podcast, pull it out, and react properly to it. So let me get the podcast and let's start this reaction. So this is it's a 1 hour 19 minutes and 45 seconds. We would try our best to get to hear as much as, okay, I want you people to hear from the beginning what was said, what was not said, what led to what that made Trevor Noah to make those comments that he made. So when you're coming with your analysis and your take, what you think about the things he said and the things that the other two co-hosts, because right now the way they were saying this whole thing online, I was actually thinking that it was just Trevor Noah that was talking. Okay, please, if you're just coming in, give us a thumbs up, give the live stream a thumbs up. Thank you so very much. I thought that it was just Trevor Noah that was doing this by himself, but you get to see that he was doing the show with two other ladies. And let's just dive right in. Let's dive right in. Let's go. Let me get this and let's do this. Wait a minute. Why is my volume? Okay. They'll have like a banner flying sometimes. Like, we're proud that Trevor Noah went to. You guys kicked me out. You guys kicked me out of the school, and now you're putting up a banner like, we are proud to be the school that Trevor Noah went to. And I'm like, but you kicked me out. Okay, so they're gonna start very soon. This is what now? Trevor Noah. So this was done on Trevor Noah's podcast, okay, which is What Now with Trevor Noah. Okay, so if you're not following his podcast channel, go and follow, because I know a lot of people will want to, when they see this clip, the first place you will go, I also did the same thing. The first place I went was his main channel, and you will not find this on his main channel. It is on his podcast channel. So shout out to Trevor Noah's podcast channel. We're going to be reacting to this, so we're going, you know how they do proper reaction, but if you're just a consumer of content online, I will explain that to you. When you're using somebody else's content, you have to make a change to it. That's what YouTube says. So even if the person is coming to flag your content, give you strike or whatnot, YouTube will review and tell you that the person is not against their guideline. You have to react properly, and that's what we're going to do. Now, come on in. I want to hear your opinions about this DEI. I'm not in the United States, not from there, never been there. So I don't know much about you people's DEI and what. I just know a little bit about this whole thing. So I want us to just listen and get to understand where this whole conversation started from. So please, if you're here, drop your comments and let us know what you know. Are you based in the United States? Are you from the United States? Tell us what you know about DEI and what you think about this whole thing. Since Donald Trump came into power, a lot has been happening in the United States, and we all know that much. And let's continue. Okay. How many adverts he's going to do again?
It's funny. In preparing for this conversation, I was thinking there's very few people we sit down with where you can talk about as many topics as we can.
Let me know if you people can hear the sound. If you can hear.
Conversation, Ruha fits perfectly. In the
Hear the sound.
like everything.
Master of none, though. Master of none.
Don't say that. No. Actually, you should say that.
You think she's a master of none?
You should say that.
Give me a second. So they're just getting into the conversation.
You should say that. You think she's a master of none? You should say that.
Okay, so I want to check the sound here because sometimes when you're live and people are not responding yet, you have to check the sound by yourself. So let's go.
Well, I'm gonna read you the full quote.
Yeah.
So I like to consider myself a master of none, and I used to hate it my whole life.
Okay.
Until I'll read you the full quote. The full saying is, "A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one."
Yes, okay. I love it. You know, the word amateur. There's a beautiful essay by Edward Said where he talks about, you know, the difference between professionals and amateurs, and he says, you know, at the heart of amateur is amour. It's love.
It is the love of something.
Yeah. It's actually a source of pride because you're infusing love. You're led by love, not necessarily a need for status and accolades and professional sort of titles. And so I embrace that.
So let me say, this lady had a MacArthur, like the genius. Before we go down this more road.
You're welcome if you're just joining us.
A very
Now Trevor just loved to stress how Nigerians love education and this and that. And very soon you will hear what he's going to say.
I'm sure. Professor.
Christiana, you could not be more Nigerian.
No, I'm
exactly.
No, because if my parents are listening, they're like, oh, she's just speaking to some person with an opinion. I'm like, no, mom and dad.
So yeah, that's for your parents.
That's for my parents. This woman has a MacArthur genius grant. So
yeah.
she's written a ton of books. For those at home that may not be familiar, Ruha is a tenured professor at Princeton University.
So they are introducing the lady, Ruha, telling you she's a professor, so that they're trying to set the stage to let you know that whatever this woman will be saying, don't think that it's just a random person that is saying anything. This is a professor. Now, professor, no play. Don't play. Nigerians don't joke with education, okay? You don't go to high school and you come out like I'm being in school. They're like, what? Rest.
I'm like, she's not an amateur. Who's currently on
Nigerian?
This so Nigerian. Welcome.
Will point out more than this person. This is a professor.
Okay, so right now we're having advert. Let's allow the advert to play.
Then this person, this is a professor.
Yes,
Trevor, you're trying with the Nigerian accent, but your accent is so strong, you're not getting it. You know they get her well. This is a professor. Wallahi.
This is a doctor.
I'm sorry, doctor.
Do you know what is PhD? Do you know? No, you're not talking to a person. This is a doctor.
She's not your mate.
You are so it's so crazy how you just like and another thing.
Wait, but it's important context.
Trevor, let's start counting how many times she has to remind.
Someone has to do it because she's too humble.
Yeah, and I think that's why you're the perfect person to speak to about every. I wrote down a list of things because I didn't want to miss anything. Everything from DEI to the world of tech, education, community and the way we see it, society, government, the role that it plays. I was like, it feels like your work has drawn you into everything. You know, your degrees, your qualifications, your expertise, the amount of time you spend on it, your books. So maybe the first thing we should jump into is DEI. Has DEI failed? Was it bound to fail?
You know what? I feel like this was a deliberate act by Trevor Noah, you know that if you're a content creator, you're constantly mostly someone that covers certain, like I mean, your niche on social media. If you're someone that is kind of gist related and things like that, you're constantly surfing the web to find topics that are controversial, things that are going to bring debate and things like that. So I think Trevor was very clever to pick of all the topics and everything happening in the United States and all around the world right now. He picked this DEI topic because we know that it is a hot one going on. There's a huge debate going on in the United States, and I think it was deliberate. He really wanted this. He really wanted this. What is it called? Attention, or if I should call it that. And the also, I feel like he was also his team. They were really prepared for this, and they picked this woman didn't hold back. Okay, this woman didn't hold back, didn't sugarcoat anything, didn't care how Roha, I think is her name, right? Yes, Roha Benjamins didn't care how it's going to sound to you. You're going to like it, you're not going to like it. She didn't care. She just was going to speak her honest opinion and how she feels and what she thinks about this topic, and she went in. That's why Trevor is being dragged, because Trevor also said what he wanted to say, didn't care what anybody thought about it, what anybody's opinion was going to be about that, but he said what he said. Okay, so what's going on here? Okay, so let's go.
DEI. So to see it coming down, I feel for those who were genuinely invested in that as a potential to transform institutions and industries, but it always felt like a concession, a placeholder for something that could be more transformative. And so, like with placeholders, I think they become permanent. As opposed to being a stepping stone, it becomes this kind of, safe way of corralling those who would sort of cause trouble.
Right.
And so, you could say it was bound to fail, or you could say it's doing exactly what it was designed to do. And so I think we shouldn't be satisfied with kind of these sort of token.
Hello, Yoyos Media. Welcome. Thank you so very much for joining us today. So, like I said, this is not a topic that I know so much. So, I wonder if you're here, you're in the United States, you've been there for a long time, you know about the DEI. Let's talk. Let me know as they are having this conversation. If they say something that you feel it's not correct and you want to chip in something, let me know. I can see the comments and I can pause and read your comments out. So please, those of you that are going to be watching the replay also, okay, because I know most people will see the replay, drop your comment. Don't feel like because the video is already done, we cannot. This is a conversation that a lot of people have what to say, so we can continue tomorrow. So drop your comments. I always come back to watch the replay. Sorry, I always come back to read the comments and all of that. So if you want us to have like a conversation and things like that about this, let me know. So drop your thoughts.
Fleeting forms of attention, because as we're seeing now, they come and go very quickly. So many of the people who were hired under DEI programs, after the killing of George Floyd, are now losing their jobs. Yeah. Entire programs are going up in smoke. So I think we should rethink what our demands are.
Ruha, it's interesting you say that. The thing that made me come across you, not first, but a very viral moment, you gave a commencement speech at your alma mater, Spelman College, and you said black faces in high places will not save us. And for some people who really believe in like representation politics, they jump up against that idea. They think, no, we need black faces in high spaces. What brought you to that conclusion? Because it's a very radical one, and also like, I would say kind of cynical as well.
First of all, I want to say shout out to Trevor Noah and his team and Roa Benjamin and the co-host. Sorry, I don't know her name. Please, if you know her name, let me know. I want to say shout out to the three of them and the people behind the scene and everything. Look, when you're a content creator, you're putting content out, and for someone like Trevor that has actually made name, he's been in the US for a while, he's gained ground doing his thing and all of that. There are certain topics that as a content creator you shy away from, you don't want to discuss. And this DEI is one of those that you have to be extremely careful when discussing it, because if you're not careful, what you will say, you will receive a lot of backlash. So the fact that Trevor didn't, like, he's like, I'm going to talk about it anyway, okay, people might not like what I have to say. People might not like my opinion. I might be dragged. And exactly, he's trending. But he's still doing what he's doing. So let's go.
I'm just interested about what about your life path once you apply that place. It doesn't matter if it's a black person at the top.
Yes,
this system is rotten.
So many stories I could tell. One is, as a graduate student, I was in that kind of position of being enrolled to be the black face of a scientific program that was trying to recruit more black patients to undergo a very experimental treatment. So I was enrolled to be that person that was supposed to help win over the trust of this community that was needed for this program. And it was a very uncomfortable position because I was, at one hand, sort of touted and put up on a pedestal, but at the same time very vulnerable, because if I had said no, then I would have lost access to X, Y, and Z. So one is my own complicity. Then very recently, in the last year, in my own institution, I've observed how Black administrators in particular are really being called on to do the dirty work, to write the threatening emails, to call students who are demanding an end to genocide aggressive.
Okay, so let's take this comment. Like I said, you people keep your comments coming, and we are going to be reading those comments also, because everybody's opinion and these people that are talking right now will not be the same. So let's do this. And as I don't know much about this topic, so I'm relying on all of you to inform me and educate me on this one. So that's what I'm relying on. Okay, then let's see the comment from Oyoyo's Media. Oyoyo's Media said it is a continuous rethinking on all policies, because any of the policy that will benefit people of color, they always find a way to disrupt it. Okay. I see. Okay, that's a good one.
Do the dirty work, to write the threatening emails, to call students who are demanding an end to genocide aggressive and angry and a threat. And so it's not the white president, but a whole flank of Black administrators who are the ones who are really doing the work of these institutions to repress free speech and dissent. And I think that that is very strategic, because when that is the face of the message, people perhaps who believe in representational politics may be less likely to question it, be critical of it, to push back against it. So it's really a way of insulating business as usual with a cosmetic veneer of change and progress and inclusion that I really believe we have to look past and look through in order to see what's actually going on.
I can imagine, as I'm listening to you say these two things about diversity, the first part of it is, I can imagine a lot of people who don't share your politics cheering with you, first of all, because they, like, I think of people like Elon Musk who have said, no, he's like, we don't want diversity. We want the best people for the job, and that's it. And stop hiring diversity. Boeing planes are crashing because of the blacks. The blacks don't know how to screw doors in, right? Even though there's no record of this. So he would hear you and be like, yes, thank you. We don't want diversity. We want the best person for the job.
Yes.
Another person would be like, wait, but then Ruha, if we're not addressing the exclusion of people, like when I think of South Africa's history, the intention behind what we called Black economic empowerment, which was terribly implemented, by the way, I think the idea behind it was great. And it was, for a long time, Black people couldn't go to schools, Black people couldn't get this type of education, they couldn't get this type of job, they couldn't live in this city, they couldn't, similar to America, right? You couldn't get a bank loan, you couldn't get a mortgage, your house was undervalued.
The audacity that this example that he's giving is actually happening in Africa, like well, anyway, we cannot talk, Sha. Let's just listen. One of the reasons why I want to do this is because when you go online, you will just notice that people clipped just the part where he said what he said, where he said the things that are controversial. That's where they clipped off. But it is better for you to listen to the conversation from the beginning and know what happened and listen to it, let the whole thing build up, then get to that moment. That's one of the reasons why I wanted us to come in and react together to this. Listen to Trevor Trevor and the ladies what they had to say, then you can understand, because I felt like those people that actually put him on what is it called, online, and they are referring to him as a skinhead, this and that and stuff. I feel like that's too much. He also said the guy is mad because it was a black woman who persecutes him and got him convicted. Oh, okay.
etc. continues to be. And
Wow.
so someone said, how do we design a system that
Wow.
tries to right that wrong and get people to where they should
That
be?
can be a thing, because he
And
behaves like a
I can
child.
imagine somebody listening to what you're saying going like, whoa, wait, but
That Oga at the top, he acts like a 2 years old child. Like even the 2 years old child is more mature than Oga at the top.
then what are we supposed to do? Not fix it? Yeah. Because I know you're very solutions driven as well. What do you think we're missing when we only think of the inclusion or not the inclusion?
Okay, so adverts, wait for that advert to
What do
play
you
out
think
so they
we're
make their
missing when we
coin.
only think of the inclusion or not the inclusion?
Simply put, we're not asking what we're being included into. And so, whether we draw on something that Martin Luther King said in terms of being integrated into a burning house, or we think about the fact that plantations were.
I kind of agree with this woman here, not based on the DI thing, but I do feel like some of the things that are happening in the United States, they just kind of put people of color at the forefront. Meanwhile, when they start making that plan and everything, they don't include people of color. Okay, the main thing, the plan they have, they plan it and do it by themselves, but in order to make it look good and not get people to start tongues, no wagging of tongues and things like that, they kind of put people of color in certain places where it's almost like, okay, you will take the fall if anything goes wrong, but the main thing we want to do, you will never know. So I kind of agree with the woman here, with Rob Benjamin
very
here
diverse places.
on
But we
this
would never say
particular example
and
she's
that
giving.
we would never say that they were. We would never say that they were progressive or liberal. So diversity and domination can go hand in hand. And honestly, many of the.
So you see, Oyoyo's media also agrees, said what that lady said is right. They bring black people, especially black women, to face things head on. So you see, that's why I was like, they shouldn't have clipped that video the way they clipped it and made it. I'm like, they should have just put some of these points that they made also, so people get a better picture of what is happening, what the topic was all about, before Trevor made the statement he made, because right now it's going down. People are dragging Trevor like mad.
Institutions that people are currently working on continue this plantation ethos. I just came back from a conference where educators of color working in schools around the country, specifically independent schools, private schools, that so many of them got hired a few years ago are now being let go. They were used up. They were put on the face of the websites. They were used to make these institutions feel.
Absolutely. Yoyo's Media said bloggers want traffic, so they don't care. Absolutely. You're so correct. And I think that's another thing that led Trevor Noah to also pick this topic as what he's going to be discussing, because he knows that this is going to trend. Okay, people are going to reshare. 'Cause, people don't easily reshare content. But when they know that this thing will bring them traffic, also, once you've just done that video or podcast or whatnot, they will reshare it so fast. Look how fast this thing went viral.
Good. And now that.
Do you notice that I saw a channel that has even more views than what this Trevor Noah's podcast have, because of the title that this person used, how he described Trevor on the title, the thumbnail, and it's so eye-catching. He has more views. Trevor has 103K. This person has over 200 and something K already.
They are actually using their voices. They're being let go. And so that means that it was never about true inclusion of people's insights and experiences, but it was there to make the institutions feel good about themselves. And so again, when we're offered two choices, exclusion or inclusion, we always have to ask ourselves what's being left off the table.
I actually had a follow-up.
That's something you people will never know.
An activist alongside the students in the pro-Palestine movement, kind of become I'd say the professorial face of this movement at Princeton. And because of your
Wow. So for those of you that do not know, Oyoyo's Media is also someone that stays in the United States, a legal practitioner. And she said, so right, it happened to me. I was used for photo props without my knowing. Can you imagine? The way some people manipulate things, you will just be in a place, and I love the example that Roa Benjamin gave, where she said, are we being integrated into a burning building? That's exactly a good example, because from the outside you've not started seeing the smoke, you've not started seeing the fire, so you don't even know that that building is on fire, and they just lead you in and they tell you to be on the front row, and you think you're just walking into a normal building, only for you to get in there and now you are trapped because you didn't know, but they knew all along, and they would just be smiling. You can imagine people just propping you up for photos, and you not even knowing what is happening, thinking it's just a normal thing that you were there to do.
And that is what you're talking about when you're talking about Black administrators and the protests against genocide, etc., in the light of diversity and inclusion. Can you speak more about that? Because you're putting your career on the line, and absolutely, there's people out there, but like, what's Palestine got to do with you? So I'm really curious about that.
I'm happy to. And just quick clarification, I'm on probation for a year, specifically for accompanying the students in a sit-in that took place in the spring. And I went in because they were concerned about one, police brutality that we'd been witnessing at Columbia and other places, and also because up until that point, the administration was really distorting their activities and their motives. And so they wanted a kind of objective faculty observer, but the administration has rejected that status and just said, I was with them, and so now I'm on probation. And so, to think about, again, at the very moment you mentioned the MacArthur, the day before I received the call from MacArthur that I won this award in September, I had just had a very tense call with the administration that was essentially investigating my role. And so when the award was announced, it was all over the university website, all of the accolades. So they take credit, and at the same time, they're investigating me for basically acting on what I was hired to do.
Damn.
And
this is really unbelievable. Can you imagine how twisted and how difficult some people's jobs are? First, they hire you to do a job, you do the job, and then there's still a problem. You're still probed, you're still on probation, you're still investigated, and then in front of everybody, they smile with you, they clap for you, telling you bravo, you're well done, and everybody thinks that everything is well, but behind the scene, you're just, yo, man.
They're happy for it to stay theory.
Okay, so it's advert again.
For it to stay theory. They're happy for it to stay on the page. But when you start actually living what you're writing and studying about, then it becomes a problem. And so that is, again, this disjunction between liking things to be controlled in the way that will benefit them. But as soon as you start to challenge them, then they try to put you in your place. Try being the operative word.
You spoke about this, in that same address that Christiana was talking about that went viral. One of the things you speak about as well is these universities, and universities in general, being quick to suppress people's voices when a protest is happening, but then many years later, rewarding those people with honorary degrees. And I didn't realize that until you said it. I was like, there's so many people, you name it, like from MLK to Nelson Mandela to where universities, like the institutions, were against them.
Yeah.
And then many decades later, they're like, we would like to honor you, Mr. Mandela, with this degree for the peace work that you've done.
Exactly.
And I wish, like, Nelson Mandela, I wish, like, one time he would have come on and be like, but you were a country. You told me to shut up when I was broken.
Trevor is never serious. The way he just tries to make all these different African accents, and not only he does, even Russian and everywhere. It is really really funny, really really funny. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have moments with Oyoyo in the building. Okay, he said I'm trying something, so I switched. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Come on in, come on in, come on in. Moments with Oyoyo. That's where you get this type of gist, analyzing important topics like this. All right.
But I mean, I guess you don't want to do it in that moment, but
Yeah. But I mean, like Alice Walker came to Spelman. She was an undergrad there. She left after a year or two max because they were really against her civil rights activism. And now, of course, she will be touted as a former student, even though she had to go to another school to graduate.
Wow,
So there's so many cases like that. And all of these schools we're talking about, had students who were,
which is really weird. It's really weird that the same people you work with, the same school and everything, they will try to suppress you, and sometimes you're forced to go somewhere else to graduate, get your certificate and everything. And then when the world starts celebrating you, then they want to associate themselves with you. Then they remember that you are an alumni of that school or whatnot. I'm like, if you're not even going to support the person from the beginning, why even try to tap from their fame or their praise and whatnot? Like, but that's what the institutions are about, right?
Against apartheid, who fought apartheid,
Faking it.
thinking about South African apartheid
Yes,
is like
yes.
this touchstone in all of these places where they really, in hindsight, they're like, oh yeah, we should have been against that when it was happening. And so now that's like part of the history.
Yeah, they want
Students
to
who are
rewrite it.
carrying that tradition, they can't connect the dots.
I'm curious, Ruha, as like Trevor teases me all the time because I'm a bit of a champagne socialist, right?
Yes.
So I'm always very curious about the people that it goes from theory, like you write all these books, to actual praxis. Like you're on probation right now. You're not working because of what you believe in. What is it about you and your history that means you're like, oh, this can't just be what I write about. It has to be what I live.
Yeah. So one is that my work is not tied to the institution. Like I carry on doing the work. This probation is like adult timeout. It's like if you do anything else, quote unquote, unprofessional, as that's the language they use, then you'll really get in trouble. So it's mild compared to those colleagues who have been fired and were tenured and who've been penalized much worse. The other thing is that, I became a professor very reluctantly. Like when I was applying to grad school, my undergrad professors were like, really? You want to get a PhD? Because I was always making trouble. I was always on the activist end of the spectrum. So they were actually surprised that I wanted to pursue this. And literally the day that I turned in my dissertation, I was still questioning. So I've come into this profession reluctantly, never fully wearing that coat tightly. It's always loose. And I always think of myself as like more like a kindergarten teacher in Professor Drag, like I'd much rather be talking to a room full of, kids and teenagers, and I do often. And so I think partly is that I don't identify strongly with this very uptight, insulated, sort of ideal of what it means to be an academic or professor. I have one foot in the academy and always one foot out. I will never turn to these institutions for my sense of self-worth or self or mission. It's like I don't give them my all, and so they can't take anything from me in doing this either.
Wow. Let's talk a little bit more about
this is strong coming from Roha Benjamins. They can't take anything from me from doing this. I love her mindset. Despite all her achievement and everything, she just knows where the people she's playing with. She knows that there are a lot of sharks, crocodiles in the water and everything. So she's like, okay, I'm gonna just have one foot in, one foot out. Whatever comes out of this, I'm okay with it. I'm not even going to stress about it.
Institutions themselves, specifically institutions of higher learning. On previous episodes of the podcast, we've talked to, historians like, let's say, Yuval Noah Harari, and, we've talked to people like Ta-Nehisi Coates, and we've talked to, and obviously because of the time we're in, Israel-Palestine comes up, but then many other issues come up, and that one overshadows some of the other conversations that are as prominent in different ways, right? The one thing I found myself wrestling with over the past few months is how universities have failed, in my opinion, to be the bastion of conversation that moves people in a direction. And what I mean by this is, you remember, Christiana, this was even when we were still at the Daily Show. I didn't like that universities were blocking people like Ben Shapiro from coming to speak, right? And the reason for it was because at the time people were like, no, we don't want him to come. He's a Nazi. We don't want this, blah, blah, blah. So forget how you feel about him or not. The thing I kept on saying was, if a university cannot immunize its students to the ideas of a quote unquote radical person, let's say, depending on how you look at them, then what is the point of a university? Like, I feel like that's supposed to be the boxing ground where we go. It's almost like you want your kids to come back from school and say, hey, today we fought with each other about apartheid, and
I just hope everybody is listening to what Trevor is saying, so people get a better and a full picture of what Trevor actually said, because what the blogs have is just a clip of a 1 hour, over 1 hour. This is 1 hour, 19 minutes, 45-second long content, and they clipped how many minutes? 5-10 minutes from less than, was that even up to 10 minutes? And that's what has actually gone viral, and that's why he's been dragged. People are like, wait a minute, we already have one crazy South African here, we're not going to have two.
We fought about whether or not people should
That's
be segregated.
Elon Musk.
And we fought about
now
what's happening in the Middle East. But in our school, they teach us how to fight because it's like because there is a constructive way to do it. And I wonder, from your perspective, what you think we're missing in higher learning institutions, that now it doesn't seem like the kids or the faculty or the institution itself have the ability to facilitate something that society definitely can't.
Yeah, I think that's, there's layers to it, because I don't necessarily think it's a new phenomenon, that this sort of lack of capacity to engender constructive conversation. I would say that is distinct from the kind of debate bro style of someone like Shapiro, where it is very combative. It's not about us gaining knowledge together, but it's really about me winning.
Oh, it's about owning people.
Yeah, definitely. We should be able to wrestle with difficult conversations. And so I think part of, the exceptionalism around Palestine that we've seen in the last year in particular has a lot to do with the idealization of what the university should be, which it hasn't ever been for the vast majority of people, and really the economic underpinnings of these institutions. One person described it as a hedge fund that offers classes. So to really think about, really this idea that these are this enlightenment model of learning, and so much of it is profit driven, and these profits are deeply intertwined with the military industrial complex, weapons manufacturers. Like, it's not just about disclosing and divesting specifically when it comes to Israel-Palestine, but the fact that these institutions are in bed with the military, so that the calling into question of that entire infrastructure is really like getting to the foundation of what's holding these places up. And so the crackdown that we think, oh, this is so disproportionate, these students are just trying to talk about this or that, it's because what they're talking about is really getting to the foundations of what's holding these institutions up.
We're going to continue this conversation right
so
after
that's,
this short break.
So we're going to have a short break, and they're going to continue. So I hope everybody gets to hear this, the full, or even if not the full, from the beginning to what led to what, and why some statements were
I was
made.
thinking about it for a whole host of topics. Like, let's say Donald Trump, for instance. I'm often surprised when I meet people who cannot understand why anyone would vote for Donald Trump. I go, you mean you have no? They're like, I just don't get it. Well, how could you? Then I'm like, what do you mean, how could you? You may not agree with the person, but surely you should be able to see that this person is identifying an issue, and they see Donald Trump as the solution to this issue, right? So even if you erase your politics just for a moment, the issue will remain, right? So the factory job is gone, the land is now barren. There's more pollution, people, birth rates, you name it. The issue is going to remain regardless of the politics. But I don't know. I find myself constantly in conversations with people who cannot even begin to fathom the possibility of another human seeing the world differently, or seeing the same thing but coming to a different conclusion on how to repair it?
Trevor, we the three of us and many others like us, we have to navigate a world that was not built for us. So by a matter of survival, we have to take other people's position. We have to know how we're being seen at all times in order to navigate, to stay out of danger. It's a capacity that we have grown, we've had to grow. So we're constantly shifting positions. We have language for this. Du Bois called double consciousness, looking through different lenses. And so this is part of how we see the world, is not to only see it through our own lens. And so the fact that people cannot switch perspective is a luxury. It's a privilege that means you can only navigate the world only through your lens. You don't have to take other people's positions. So when it comes to something like the Trump phenomenon, or just thinking about what on the outside appears like hate and vitriol and evil even, part of what we have to reckon with is how from the inside of that perspective, it's not experienced as hate and vitriol. In some cases, it's actually affinity, love. People are bonding over these perspectives and outlooks. And so I remember a few years ago, I saw this really heartbreaking video, this cafeteria scene of kids that I think it was right after he was elected the first time. These kids were chanting, build that wall. And they were pointing at this little Latino boy in the cafeteria, build that wall, build that wall.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about not just those kids, but the parents of those kids who see the building of that wall, the bordering of our world, not as an evil infrastructure, not as motivated by hate, but motivated by a distorted form of love for their own children.
So I think this is really, really a deep conversation that people really need to go over to Trevor's podcast channel on YouTube and consume the full content. And why am I saying this? Some of the things that are coming out are like really weird, and it also goes to show the world that we live in, where a little clip can just be posted online and people just dive headfirst into the whole thing. But when you now see the whole picture, you're like, oh, okay, I think this was misrepresented.
So the idea that we have to do this to protect our children, their jobs, their futures, it's really this what Fanon would call like this perverse form of love. I remember reading as a grad student a book called Women in the Klan that was talking about women's very prominent role in the Ku Klux Klan. And, this...
Hashtag diversity, hashtag inclusion. I want to acknowledge them.
Thank you. Point. And how, the ethnographer who really infiltrated and went inside these organizations and befriended, in quotes, these women, she writes about how, they had potlucks, they took care of each other's kids, there was so much affinity and love in the inside that then got expressed by who they hated. Like they bonded over who they hated.
Right.
So unless we can understand that, the kind of internal workings, then we only think of it as what is experienced from the outside. We won't get to the root of the problem, which is people seeking bonds with other human beings, but only being able to do it by having something to be against. And that is not inevitable, right? That's just what the pattern, but it's not inevitable.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned elementary school students, because I thought of little expelled Trevor.
But I must clearly state I should have been expelled.
Okay.
For the record, I was not doing anything worth fighting for. I was an absolute terror.
Yeah.
And the school was right to expel me. However,
no. I'm going to correct you. The school should have been set up in such a way that would allow you to express your...
I think we're gonna disagree on this, but we'll come back to it.
One thing that struck me about what you said, they should have created a space where Demon Trevor could have thrived. And I would love for you to kind of speak a lot more about like your abolitionist politics, because I think that is the thread that runs through everything you believe, whether it's Israel and Palestine, reproductive justice, how we approach universities. You kind of have this worldview that everyone can kind of be redeemed and fixed, and that kind of starts in the childhood arena of how we do elementary school, which I'm really curious about, because I'm currently going through the process of trying to get a little Trevor into elementary school.
Yes.
So I'd love to know more of that, because you have this very compassionate, I think, lens on the Trump voter that people may be surprised that someone like yourself has, because no one thinks about the fact that, oh, these people do love their children, and it's expressed by this antagonist. So I'd love to hear.
And I think it's different that, you know, like you can understand something and not abide it at the same time. You know, I can understand it, but I also feel very strongly that part of what sometimes gets lost when we talk about abolition is accountability. And so it's not that we can just hurt each other, harm each other, say whatever we want, and just walk through the world sort of unaccountable to each other. So I think hand in hand with this worldview.
Please, like I say, I know that most people will be watching the, like I said earlier, most people will be watching the replay. Drop your thoughts as they're talking. Whatever point it gets to and you feel like you don't agree with them, drop your thoughts in the comment section. Those of you that will be watching the replay also, because most times other people will like, oh, I wish I caught this topic when it was live. Drop your comments and we'll still be able to see your comments and read your comments. If you agree with Trevor and his team, do you disagree? What you stand about DEI and the statement that was made by Trevor and everything about the conversation. And now that you finished listening, after listening, we're not through yet, but after listening to the full story or listening to more than what you saw online that made people to start dragging Trevor, what are your thoughts?
There's this idea that we have to build a social fabric that when I hurt you, I'm both going to be accountable to, and I'm going to take action to ensure it doesn't happen again. So when it comes to school and what we will call like the school to prison pipeline and all the ways that we incorporate carceral processes and logics in school, including suspension and detention and all of these things, it's a lack of creativity. It's a lack of thinking, how else could we organize this such that we don't cut off people who have a bad day or are, sort of wrestling with something and can't express why it is, so they act out in this way. There's examples of schools and communities that are experimenting with that. And a lot of it comes down to, again, this prioritization of order and excellence over really play and imagination, and thinking about the fact that oftentimes the first things to go from many schools when there's budget cuts, recess and art, like the very places that people would be able to have self-expression. And even our language of like Black excellence, like as something to strive for, has a huge underside, going back to what we were joking about, the kind of like Nigerian parents, like there's so much that gets lost and repressed and discounted when we strive for a very narrow form of achievement. There's so many forms of intelligence and genius and creativity that gets shut down that we never get to experience, because we want everyone to sit behind their desks for 8 hours a day, raise their hand, walk in line, and so part of it is to rethink even what we consider education and excellence and achievement, because everyone could ultimately benefit from those changes.
So I love that idea, but I still say I should have been expelled. Okay. No, and I'll tell you why. So I think this is one of the main things that we struggle with in society. Unfortunately, we are always at the mercy of, the average, right? And that's most systems. You're working at the mercy of the average. If a car is too high, it cannot drive into a parking garage, right? If something is too wide, it cannot fit into an aisle, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think of like schools. Schools are a crazy novel concept when you think about it, right? You design like one building where like 1,000 odd people can come in, and all of them are learning and all of them are coming together, where before it was just like little community, few people, you learn what you can, we do what we can. And we blew this thing out for good and for bad, right? So what I mean by I should have been expelled actually agrees with a lot of what you're saying. I think that you have to expel Trevor from that environment because he's not good for that environment. And so I think sometimes maybe the word expel has a different connotation. I don't think of expelled as like, no, they hurt me. No, they kicked me out.
Yeah, you got a free day.
And let me tell you why I say this.
Trevor, you're so traumatized. We're traumatized African kids.
No,
you should have been.
Let me tell you why. When you talk about accountability, there is no world where exclusion will not be part of it. It's quite impossible. The mere act of singling a person out is excluding them already. So if you have 10 kids together, you tell them all to keep quiet and draw. One stands up and screams. Even by saying to them, come over here, let me speak to you. You have expelled them from the group and you have excluded them, right? Now, your intention may be, oh, I'm going to make them feel good. I'm going to now encourage them. Hey, maybe you play a little bit more. But even when we create this new space for them that encourages that, they are excluded from the group. Because they go like, no, I want to be in the drawing group. And you're like, no, but you're not a drawer.
But the teacher having the conversation, like bringing them aside to restore them back to the group.
Yes, but
it's different from bringing them to the side.
If you're just joining us, you are welcome. Please give the live stream a thumbs up. We are trying to get the full picture of the conversation that is making Trevor Noah to trend. Ooh, pardon me. It's very cold here. The weather is something else. So multitasking. We're doing our stream and I'm getting woods and fixing the fireplace and things like that. So yeah, I just went downstairs and left you all to listen to this. So I'm breathing hard because I've been climbing the staircase.
To banish them from the group.
This is what I don't like.
Restoration?
You guys are trying to brainwash me. This is what I don't like. And I mean it. This is what I think is the problem. Is they go, let us bring them aside, and then we'll try and turn them into the drawers. And it's like, I'm not saying that. I'm saying.
Okay, Momento Yo-Yo said, you see, the whole story is always very important. Absolutely. Because there's no way you're able to come up with a proper, what is it called? Analysis if you don't hear the full story. And I think that's where a lot of people miss it most times.
And that's why I agree with you in a large part of what you're saying. And maybe that's why I'm a fan of the upside of AI, if it doesn't kill us all, okay? Is because the average needs to be the average.
AI is
how any system
all.
works. You just need to find a way for the anomalies to exist, and it's hard to cater to all of them. But when you exclude somebody, I don't believe in trying to get them back in. No, I mean it. Because they're not of the in. The more you try and put me as Trevor back into that classroom, the more I'm going to be disruptive. And that's why I love imagination. Let me, for the record, state, you can go and see me. That's why I love your book. I love your ideas. I'm a big fan of the imagining, because I go, imagine a world where you could have expelled Trevor to a school. Like they did with Harry Potter and them. Essentially, that's a school for the gifted. You go like, yo, man, you magic kids, you need to be separate. All these other kids, they don't do magic. We're going to put you in a magic school. And then you find community in and amongst magic and magicians. Does that make sense? So I'm saying you should be expelled. And I'm saying what we need to imagine is where we take expelled people to, as opposed to trying to bring them back into the thing.
So a couple of things. One is, if the kind of phenomena you're describing of people being pulled out or expelled, let's say if it was an equal opportunity expelling, where all kids were treated with the same level of scrutiny, etc., that would be one conversation. But what you're describing is there's a very strong selection effect in terms of which young people's behavior is deemed so troublesome as to warrant expelling. We have very stark disparities in the percentage of Black students, Native students, etc., who are expelled. And if you look country by country, there's another level to this where the rates of punishment that we think of as normal, let's say in South Africa or the US or et cetera, somehow magically other societies have been able to organize their schooling such that they don't have those outcomes. They're not expelled. So what we normalize and think this is the only way we can deal with this issue of the average and gifted, et cetera, somehow it's not universal. That should be a clue for us that it's possible to approach education in a way that's not like a factory, where we're graduating batches of kids. And if you have any little problem with the product, you have to pull it aside. And so partly is to really rethink our model of education that we've inherited as normal and say, what if we could approach things in a way that wasn't so mechanical, that wasn't so rigid from the start, right? And we don't have to, we don't have to come up with scratch, because there's other places that are already doing this. One of the examples that I've discussed is how in Finland, like, kids, they're not really focused on reading and math, et cetera, until the kids are older. They really take play seriously. So the teachers are like studying the kids play, and like getting all these lessons.
Which tells you everything, by the way. That's something I've learned from therapists and like great teachers.
Yeah.
Play tells you everything.
Yeah. Play tells you everything. And so they're really taking it seriously. And what's so kind of paradoxical in a way is that when they administer these universal tests across countries, to rank which country is doing better or worse.
Yeah.
Finland out-tests all the other countries. Like, a place that's not focused on testing, that's focused on play and imagination and expression and cooperation and learning how to fight, learning how to compete, productive. It's not it's not kumbaya. It's like, how do we manage conflicts? If you can't practice that as a kid, like, of course you don't have adults that can do that. If you don't learn how to negotiate that when you're younger, and you always have a teacher to step in and say, pull this aside, pull Trevor aside, expel him. No, let's figure out how to conflict and fight productively in a way that we can, so part of it is to recognize that spending time and investing in this actually leads to happier, more well-rounded human beings and people who can take tests.
Let us know what you think if you are watching and listening to this conversation. Do you have a clearer picture of where this whole thing started and what led to what, and what led to the comments and everything that is trending about Trevor Noah and his statements? Let us know.
If you really care about that,
When I was sitting looking at some of your work, there's one question I wanted to ask you, which is extremely controversial. I'm going to say this ahead of time.
Okay, so it's advert again. We'll wait for the advert to play. Let Trevor make his point, and then we are going to continue.
But, and I'll preface it with this. I oftentimes think to myself that as human beings, we're searching for solutions to real problems. We very seldom think that we've reached the wrong solution, right? Because we have a good intention. I really believe most human beings do. And in looking at some of your work, your speeches, your writing, and even society itself, even some of the things you're saying now, I found myself wondering, and this applies to America, and then maybe it'll go to other places in a different way because Finland ties in. Do you think that integration was the right move? Like, and now
I think this is the part of the conversation that they clipped, that is all over social media, this integration thing and what he's going to say. This is part they clipped out and they used to cause the whole brouhaha online. So Moment Tutorial said this is a quality conversation. Honestly, I'm still wondering why they are crucifying this guy. So
I'm
let's hear.
separating two things, because I know in America people are like, well, of course, I mean, there was racism and there was segregation, and I go, yeah, no, I'm separating them. Let's separate someone being oppressed and someone not being able to get a job and someone not being able to get a bank loan. Let's take all of those, the negative things away, because I'll put myself up personally and say, I think whether we're talking about gifted kids who are anomalous, let's say, to the norm, whether we are talking about and I mean anything that does not fit into a category. I think part of the reason Finland is able to do it is because, have you been to Finland?
It's very homogeneous.
I've been to Finland. You know who's in Finland? Finnish people. That's it. And because they're all.
So now, if you notice the video that is trending online, you will hear him talk about these Finnish people, but then you will not understand why he used Finland as example, because the Roar Benjamin spoke about schools and how they do things in Finland. But that part they did not include. They just took the clip from here that Trevor started talking. That is why he's being crucified online. So some people are wondering, like, what does this have to do with Finland? We're talking about the United States. We're talking about DEI. Why is this even? Why are you bringing European country to this whole thing and things like that? But then when you listen from the beginning till now, you understand.
There's an idea of like, no, we all head in the same direction. we all know what our actions mean. And that's a really powerful thing I've learned in communicating with other people. When I'm in a room with anyone where we start to tie together multiple things. So if I'm in a room with Black people, already there's like an implicit trust because we know what certain actions, words, and vibes mean. And then you're in a room with another African. Already. Now, even if you shout at me, I know what your shout means. The same way an Italian knows what an Italian shout means.
Yeah.
Right? I know I'm prefacing it with a lot because it's a loaded question.
Yes.
But I would love to know if you think integration was the right solution, maybe, on the other side of, what America, of civil rights.
Yeah. No, I don't. And I don't think it's actually that controversial when if you understand that segregation and integration weren't the only options. Like those are within those two options, it may seem like integration is the more progressive. Like, of course, we don't want segregation. But again, when you're being integrated into institutions, into a culture that's a supremacist culture, that's a culture that feeds off of hierarchy, that feeds off of insecurity, anxiety, why are we being integrated into that? And so part of it is to question what we're being invited into. And so, again, when you think about the example of Finnish being homogenous, nation states are imagined. The national identity is not something that is, God-given. It's not something that, existed for eternity. These identities were created, maintained, made durable over time. And so part of stretching our imagination is to recognize all of the things that have been made up, but made to seem immutable, fixed, intrinsic, including our national sort of identities. And so part of it is really like to denaturalize the things that we take for granted as somehow magically operating to make us feel connected to each other, and ask ourselves, how else can we be connected to engender this sense of solidarity where what I want for my kids, I also want for my neighbor's kids. I want for the kids who don't speak English. I want for the kids who are just arriving. And so again, to push ourselves, when you think about expanding our imagination, to make it more embracing of seeming differences that are not intrinsic, that are not something that are inevitable. My sister-in-law lives in Japan. And again, it's one of those places that people think, it's homogenous. It's, from the outside, people think everyone is, a shared identity. Yeah. But Japanese of Korean descent, among many other groups, are treated like shit. They're treated, it's discriminated in so many different areas of life, and education and healthcare. When two people go to marry, sometimes their families do a deep genealogical dive to find any Korean descent in the line before they. And so again, we are so creative in creating hierarchies and distinctions out of nothing, Why can't we channel that creativity to actually work in the opposite direction? If we're doing it to maintain hierarchies and division, perhaps we can do it to engender solidarity and connection, right? And I think it's a choice. When we give up our power and think, this is something happening to us, we have to just navigate this crooked system as it is. I think, that only serves those who are currently benefiting from the status quo. And so I always have to ask myself, who does my pessimism serve?
Okay, so there's another advert with a little bit of that, and then we continue.
I don't know what to say to that. That's amazing.
This is what I'll say to that is that I think a lot of this was inspired by me looking into your story, how you were raised, the many places you were raised, and how I think that influenced your life. The Marshall Islands, for instance, is something, it's funny how sometimes in life you start to experience a story from many different angles at the same time. You know how that happens? Like, it might be a TV show, it might be a historical event. The Marshall Islands for me is because of the Cold War. I've just been inundated with Cold War stuff in life right now. I don't know why. I'm loving it. And now with your story, it ties in a different way because you live there with your family. And you talk about how even growing up, you're in a world where this is an American-owned area now. And the people of that place who've been displaced and affected by the testing and the military base, they still have ideas, they still have dreams, they still have hopes, but it's interesting to see how that's affected you. And I'd love to know, how much of you living as an outsider everywhere has sort of made you want to fight for everyone who is an outsider? I resonate with the statement you made about being in and being normal is the luxury. Right? It's a luxury to go like, oh, this is the way it is. The more you moved around as a child, the more you're like, oh, wow, there is no normal, and I have to rediscover the normal every single time. So was there like one moment and one place you moved to as a child that stirred this up inside you? Or
I think
where do you think it came from?
It was definitely a recurring theme. It was that kind of thing where, again, that distance between how I'm being perceived and how I'm experiencing the world. And so although on one level, I was definitely an outsider in all of these places, at the same
Good to know that this is someone that was raised in different places. And I think when you're raised in different places, you're experiencing and seeing different things. So I think that actually helped to shape this woman's life. And it also helped to give her this open mind that it seemed like she has from listening to her. Let me know what you think.
I carried home within me. I didn't need other people to make me feel, oh, like you belong. It's like, I remember listening to Lapita on the show, and she's talking about, I belong wherever I am, and I really resonated with that. It's like when you're not looking for it from the outside, you cultivate it within. No one can shake it. No one can take it from you. And at the same time, being in all those places really gave me a keen sense that as human beings, like what we think of as our world, this is the way things are. I can get on a plane and move with my family, into a completely different, universe. And it's, all of the things that I took for granted in one place are different, whether it's racial classifications, whether it's who's on top, who's considered beautiful or not, like you had a great conversation about weight. Like, thinness is not fetishized everywhere in the world, and so that just tells us, oh, this thing that we think of as universal and inevitable, in a different context, there's a whole different set of, these parallel realities in a way. And I was a sci-fi nerd starting at about a teenager, moving to the Marshall Islands, like only thing being able to watch is Star Trek, and realizing, like we are very adept at creating these parallel universes. And part of it is to be able to like step in and out and see, okay, this is not working for us in this reality that we currently live. Why don't we change it? Why don't we, work with other, and it's not like we have to start from scratch. Let me show you. I'll peek into this other reality and show you they're doing something completely different with education, or with accountability and safety, or with healthcare. And so, part of it is not to get so locked into one way of perceiving things. And I think that childhood of having to move every 5 or 6 years was the classroom that I needed to be able to do that.
Don't go
Okay,
anywhere,
so I think they're going to take another short break, and they're going to continue. So let's wait for the advert and we'll continue. We've already been here for an hour.
So Trevor over here is a real AI enthusiast, and I am a techno. Like, I'm a Luddite. He talks a lot about like the transformative possibilities of AI. I'm terrified. Now, I know
also the reality. If you even rewind this exact
conversation. No, it's grounded. But because he's just an optimist in nature, he has a very optimistic view of AI. Yeah. And I know your work with the new Gym Code, you speak a lot about like racist robots and all of these things. I don't want you to feed into my technophobia. I want you to describe this world if we used our imagination to its fullness. What could AI perhaps do for us that's really good?
I think that there are many different types of AI. And the one that people often think about is artificial intelligence. That's the one that people are excited about. That's the one getting all the funding, all the hype. Yeah. And my little soapbox is to say that there are other types of AI that we need to be prioritizing, investing in, not necessarily to get rid of the first kind, the artificial kind, completely, but to really put it in its place. I personally think it's getting too much space, attention, investment as it is. And so ancestral intelligence is one thing that I think of as an important type of AI that has to do with collective wisdom, know-how, the insights and experiences of people who have to learn how to navigate the underside of society, who are constantly buried under the rubble of so-called progress. So there's kinds of knowledges that grow in that rubble that are often discounted.
So you can clearly see that a lot was discussed here. They not only spoke about DEI. This was really an interesting conversation, just as Moment with Oyo you said. But yeah, you see, the internet.
As backwards, as no longer needed, as in the past, that I think we need to center. The other type of AI is abundant imagination. Like, again, going back to thinking about what often the artificial type of AI is displacing our ability to actually use our imaginations and creativity rather than just plugging in prompts and getting the outputs. The other thing is that what appears so efficient and convenient and magical about artificial intelligence hides the fact that there are people behind these screens that are doing the grunt work to make these systems work. And this labor is outsourced to places like Kenya, to places like the Philippines, in which workers are there doing the content moderation, doing the work that on our end seems like, wow, this is just a sentient being. No, they're armies of laborers that are they're making these systems go, and they're being mistreated. They're having a mental health toll because they're often seeing the worst of the worst in order to clean these systems and the internet. So anyone who is a proponent of AI, the first kind, artificial, they need to have an answer or have a reckoning with the human dimensions, the human costs, the labor, and also the environmental costs of these systems, the energy, the water usage to simply train one algorithm. At one point, a study at MIT said it was equivalent to the lifespan of 5 cars. So it's not to say you have to be against it, but you need to reckon with the costs of creating these systems, the human, the environmental, in a way that's taken seriously.
Yeah, I think that's the difficulty with AI, right? Is
okay. So I think very soon we're going to round up because now they're talking about AI and things like that. And the main thing we wanted to hear was the DEI part and what brought about this whole dragging of so, and what brought about this whole dragging of Trevor Noah online and things like that. So I know that those of you that will come and also watch the replay later on, different time zones. Some of you are just waking up your morning, your afternoon, and things like that. But then the laptop, and that will be, sorry, I'm being distracted now because a family member just came in. So then I lost my line of thought because I was just distracted. So I know most of you are coming to watch the replay later on. Let me know after listening to everything, the conversation they had. Do you think the dragging is really like worth it? Because I'm like, hey, when you hear the full conversation, it doesn't really sound the way that short clip that they actually cut off sound. So let's listen a little bit more and off.
I've heard some people say AI is like the atom bomb. When we made the atom bomb, we didn't consider all the things. I disagree with that for a few reasons. One, because the atom bomb could not think or create or do, right? And I use think in inverted commas, okay? It could not generate, is what I mean. And more importantly, the atom bomb had only one use. Do you know what I mean? Even when they were making it, they weren't like, and it'll help you cook your food. No. Everyone knew what the bomb was for. There was no other purpose. There was no other intention. The difficulty with AI.
The problem with Trevor, which is not really a problem, is his line of career. One thing with comedians is even when they are trying to be serious, say something serious, they're just so used to adding jokes here and there. And it does make them look like they're not taking that thing so serious. And mostly when it's an important topic that is being discussed, if you notice here and there, he's just throwing in a little bit of things here and there that will make them, laugh and stuff like that. So I kind of understand. And another reason why I want to even go into this their AI robot, whatever they are talking about, is the fact that I want people to understand that they just did not sit down and discuss DEI, diving deep into DEI. They had different things and they just spoke about those things. And now everybody is just talking about the DEI part and not this other conversation.
Difficulty with AI is that we have something that puts us on the precipice of everything that we haven't even imagined, right? So here's a simple example, and I credit you, Christiana, with this. Like, you're the person who came into my life kicking down doors, telling me to consider women's health more and more and more and more. You know what I mean? Like, just kicking down my door at the Daily Show and being like, do you know what it is to be a woman? Do you know the pain?
Endometriosis.
Yeah, endometriosis. Do you know that? And I was like, oh man, I gotta pay attention to this stuff. Like, Christiana's really, but in a good way, because you're my friend, And so I think of the conversations I've had with a professor at Johns Hopkins who has shown me the AI that they use to detect breast cancer in women long before it would have ever been humanly possible to detect it. And sometimes, even more importantly, to prevent false positives. Do you know how many women are getting mastectomies, but they don't have any type of cancer? And it's like, well, thanks for playing, folks. Here's the debt, here's your healthcare bill, and you actually didn't have this thing. I look at that just in one space, right? I look at it in the world of education. A teacher is a finite resource. AI is the first thing we've seen where you could genuinely have a teacher for your child, and it isn't tied to the money that your child has, right? And I know some people are like, oh, but it's still out of reach. It is in many ways. It is. But the average cost for processing a transaction, even in the conversations we've had since 2022, has gone down 95%, just cost-wise. So the accessibility has accelerated. And the one thing that I keep grappling with is this. Yes, we know that it's using up energy, because it is. It is. But it is also the thing that has helped data centers optimize how much energy they use. And so data centers that before were just like these little hubs, little ovens cooking up all of our cloud information, those data centers can save like up to like 25-30% of their energy bill. So it's this weird situation where you have something that you're making, and you have to make the thing
see where they're going
to
with
try and
this.
help you fix the thing. And finding that balance is where I go, that's the real.
This conversation.
But the reason I'm optimistic about it is because it has another use. It has a good purpose. It has and that doesn't discount the other things. And one last thing I'll say, I'd love to know what you think about this, Ruel, because I know you are a techie like me. Is the thing I love about AI or tech in general is that it's bustable, which is not a word, but it's like you can bust it. Okay? If you say to me as Trevor, I'm going to put you in front of a judge, and this judge is going to rule on your life. If I go, this judge was biased, the judge goes, no, I wasn't biased. We talk about, like, we had this back in the day, and we still see these. You type an image, black person, on the internet. Oftentimes the image that'll come up, black man, it'll be a guy, mugshot, dangerous looking,
or a chimpanzee.
Or a chimpanzee, yes. And then you go, white
Weird
man,
one.
I'll show you like, an Ivy League, like Abercrombie and Fitch. Okay. But what I'm saying is, unlike humans,
like no
you can
balance.
actually find that and see it and code against it. You cannot with humans. I cannot prove it with a human. We've lived in a world for so long where we've gone, you discriminate, and the person's like, no, I do not. And we're like, all right, well, fun conversation. Thanks for playing.
You're saying AI can't gaslight us?
No. I'm saying we can, because we have data now, and the data. I'm not saying the world becomes perfect, but I'm saying it becomes a lot easier to get to a more perfect place when the thing that we're using is itself.
Trevor, you just have not thought about the people that are like think deeper than this, because if you're talking about we can use this data because we have data, we can correct these things. Think about the orgas at the top first, before you start thinking about what you can correct and what you cannot correct. These people don't see anything wrong with things like that, images like that, pictures like that, narratives like that. They don't care about changing nothing. So AI or no AI ain't gonna work.
Personal, and then has data that we can work off of. And that's why I'm hopeful. Okay? I'm not a person who's like, this is going to be the best thing ever. I'm saying there are many places that could be better. And I'm hopeful because we can catch it when it's not, in a way that with humans, we just flat out could not. Because you couldn't prove it.
And I do think that one of the ways that I think of these technologies as useful is, as Trevor described, as a mirror.
Yes.
But that presumes that people are motivated by data and facts and information, like by that seeing is believing. And we know through studies that have presented hard data to people to show them this disparity exists, this inequality exists. Seeing that information or data often has them double down on whatever their priors were. You know, there was a study out of Stanford a few years ago. They presented data on incarceration to white Americans in San Francisco and New York. Said, look at these Black people being warehoused at disproportionate rates in our jails and prisons. And when they were exposed to the data, they became more supportive of the policies that were creating that effect. Stop and frisk in New York, 3 strikes law in California. And so partly is to reckon with, yes, these systems can be a reflection of society, but the facts alone will not save us. This is not, people are not simply motivated by information, but by stories. Stories. But then when it comes to like the examples you offered, which I think are really important, whether in healthcare, you know, you talked about the breast cancer screening, or in education, more tailored learning. There are, again, studies that are showing that many of these systems are just reproducing and hiding existing problems in these institutions or in these industries. In healthcare, there was an audit a few years ago where they looked at a widely used healthcare algorithm that was discriminating against Black patients because it was trained on data in which doctors were not offering adequate services and time to their Black patients.
Right.
So the smarter the algorithms get, the more racist and sexist they often become. Like intelligence is like learning. Well, this is how you
can become.
Yeah, not
I think
inevitably.
that's the distinction for me.
Not inevitable. So there's another counter example, and this is a positive one, I think, that sort of lends itself to your optimism, is that a group of researchers said, okay, we understand this phenomenon, it's getting reproduced in these systems. So what they did was trained AI, not on doctors, the official medical reports, but they trained the system to predict what a patient would say.
You know, when you have someone like Elon Musk, I really just want to say it, like, it's not going to work. The point that Trevor is trying to make concerning this AI thing ain't going to work. You have someone like Elon Musk with everything he has, the world richest person. He can get any information he had that he wants. And also Donald Trump, very influential president, now the president of the United States, and all of that. They just come online and they talk absolute nonsense. Okay, they say things that are not true, but they beat their chest and say it like it's true. For example, Elon Musk jumping online talking about, oh, Julius Malema said this, do this to white South Africans and all of that. But that was a statement that it wasn't even him that made it. It was somebody else that made that statement. And I asked myself, you call yourself a South African, Elon Musk, but we know where you're from anyway. But anyways, you call yourself a South African and you cannot tell the difference between two people from your country. Two of your countrymen, you cannot tell who made what statement and who didn't make which statement. And I love the response that the activist came out and responded what he responded. And that's the same thing we see with Donald Trump, where Donald Trump came out with his new tweet that is so silly, like sounds so childish, that that's not what a president should be doing, talking about, oh, Zelensky started the war. How did he start the war? Who dropped the first bomb and whatnot? Who did that? The Russian president did. So because it's almost like all of them are afraid of this Russian president. You know, it's almost like all of them are afraid of the Russian president. He's trying his best with all the bragging and everything he said. Now he's going on, oh, he's just a comedian, he's just this. And I'm like, why are you going on and on attacking the what's his name? Zelensky? If you're going to use, according to you, you're going to stop the war, shouldn't you be talking to both of them with the same energy? If you're going to be attacking him on this, then find out things that you think Putin has also done wrong and also do the same. But he's out here with all these childish tweets and things like that. So when you have these kind of weird people that cannot think straight for themselves, even though they are billionaires, a bit zillionaires and whatever, but still cannot use their common sense, it is worrisome. So even connecting that to AI and everything, and knowing that these are the kind of people that are the orgas at the top, there is a lot to be worried about. AI not gonna help, because at the end of the day, now man, now person, and go program that machine, and if that person they think like Elon Musk and Donald Trump, all of us would they go hell, God forbid, yeah. But it is worrisome.
say about their own experience of pain. So the AI's intelligence was based on patients' own self-reports.
Oh, wow.
So it didn't have that anti-Black bias that is embedded in those doctors' reports.
Oh,
so
wow.
it was not only more accurate, but less biased. So this is the lesson. It matters where we go looking for the data, the knowledge that we're training these systems on. If we only train them on the official records or the official data without being more creative and thinking, what is being left out? What perspectives aren't in the official record that we need to actually train these systems on? Then, in this case, the embodied knowledge of patients who know what they're feeling, and and whose pain is often discounted. We have to turn our attention and be more creative about, again, what even counts as knowledge. And so many of the things in education are trying to predict whether students are going to graduate or be successful or whether they're at risk, and they're reproducing the categories. Like if I say, guess which students are deemed higher risk by these AI systems,
right?
You know who that's going to be. In my view, rather than pointing it to the students, let's figure out which adults are creating risks for these students. Let's train the AI to figure out which fields and departments are creating a hostile environment for these young people. But we never turn the lens to those who actually have the power to shape the experience. We always look at the most vulnerable and label them. And
all right, so y'all see where this conversation is going. Over here in Europe, it's super late. This is 1:35 my time. It's a school week, so I'm going to round it up here. They're going to be talking about AI. It is already almost an hour into this, and I said it's 1 hour 19 minutes long video. So go on Trevor Noah's page and you can catch up towards the end, but we've already covered all the part that is trending online and everything, and now they're just going to be discussing about other topics and everything. I want to call it a night now because I can't stay up that late. Hope you all do understand. But yes, now it's AI and other stuff that they're going to be talking about. But let me know in the comment section. Thank you also very much for joining me today, joining this conversation. Thank you, Moments with Oyoyo. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for contributing, letting us know what you think about the conversation that Trevor had with Roa Benjamin and the co-host. So Oyoyo's Media was also here. Welcome. Thank you so much, Oyoyo's Media. We have Oyoyo's Media here. We have a moment with Oyoyo here. Thank you so much. And my silent watchers that I keep seeing the numbers going up and down, up and down. And I don't know your names because you didn't say hello or anything. So I don't know who are the people that are watching. But thank you all so very much. And I want to say thank you to those that are going to come back to watch the replay. Thank you so very much. Drop your comments, drop your thoughts. Let me know what you think. This is 1 hour, 26 minutes. We've been here. So I will see you all in the morning. Okay, I wanted to say tomorrow, but the tomorrow is already here because it's almost 2 a.m. my time. So let me go and catch some sleep before school hustle in the morning. Okay, a few hours to close my eyes and then wake up again and start school hustle. So school runs. And yeah, thank you also very much. Much is there's so much is happening all around the world. So there is so much news to cover. And I will see you all tomorrow. Okay. Thank you so very much. Watch the replay, subscribe, turn on notification. If you've seen something you want us to discuss, I've not seen, drop it in the comment. Drop it in the comment on any of my most recent video or live stream. I will most definitely see it and we'll be here to discuss it. Thank you so very much. God bless you. Have a lovely day. I know that in the US and other parts, people are still in your afternoon and evening time right now. Have a lovely day. Enjoy yourself. Over here in Europe, we're already sleeping. Okay. I'm like an owl right now, like a bat, with being awake. So thank you all so very much. I appreciate the time you come in here to spend. And I'll see you all in the morning. Thank you. Bye for now. God bless you all.